Recording.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of our Stay Engaged series. I'm TJ Cook. I'm fund manager for ABQID Fund, executive director over our programs. With us today, we have Jerry Prochaska and Rob Thompson of Ganymede Games. Disc jockeying on the Zoomage is Dan Heron, and Dan and I are at C&M Ingenuity here in Albuquerque. This series has a simple but I think profound purpose to help startups stay engaged in New Mexico at a time when I think it's even more critical than ever. It's always been critical to support startups, but now in light of COVID and the disruption that's happening, it's an incredible opportunity, frankly, for entrepreneurs and founders to step up and make bold moves and dream big dreams and connect with one another in the process. So thanks for staying engaged with us. And as more people join, we'll get into our session. The fun thing that we do with Stay Engaged, to eat our own dog food, drink our own champagne, is we allow you to stay engaged with each other. So about 30, 40 minutes from now, you'll be in a breakout room with 3 others on the call. That's why we do a Zoom meeting and not a webinar. The webinar is like shouting from the distance, and sometimes you might hear somebody, but we're really going to connect. We'll have a few prompting questions, but our hope is that you make some connections you otherwise would not have made. So we're going to do a little fireside chat, Zoomified chat to start off, so you get to know Jerry, Rob, and their company, which is a really fantastic company in which ABQID Fund has invested. They're our most recent investment, actually, so you'll get to learn a little bit why in the interactions with Jerry and Rob. Secondly, to get the ground game, what's happening with the company, kind of pre-COVID, post-COVID, and kind of a third section where we talk about their thoughts as relative newcomers to New Mexico and the startup scene, especially being HQ'd down in the wonderful city of Las Cruces, kind of what their vision for New Mexico is and what the bold moves that they would like New Mexico to make and what we can all do in the process. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll put us all in breakout rooms. We'll share what each other is working on, our COVIDian ideas, as well as our dreams for New Mexico, and then we'll come back and you'll be able to engage Jerry and Rob in Q&A about their company, further thoughts, that weird thing they said you want to follow up on before the break, etc. So get out your writing pad or your typing pad and jot your notes down while we're in this fireside chat. There will be time to ask Jerry and Rob copious questions in about probably 50 minutes. All right, let's get into it. Jerry, Rob, let's go Jerry first, but introduce yourself personally. Who is the person of Jerry Prochaska before we start talking about the CEO, Jerry Prochaska?
The person is a hardcore gamer, so played a lot of games growing up. Started far away from video games, actually as a nuclear engineer. So being able to come into my hobby and turn it into a profession was really an awesome moment for me. And yeah, that led to a journey through the game industry and ultimately ended up in co-founding Ganymede Games. So yeah, but as the person, if I'm not working, I'm probably playing games.
And I'll just put a note here that Jerry sent me a video when we first met of the board game collection he has. So he's not biased only towards video games. It's really all games, the win-lose scenarios, the art of games, as you are an aficionado.
Yeah, I think so much of games have the power to shape human behavior in really powerful and meaningful ways. They are entertainment, obviously, but they can be used as a force for good while entertaining in a pretty interesting way.
Very cool. Yeah, that's definitely going to be a breakout room question, and we just decided what games are you playing and why. Awesome. Hey, Rob, thanks for joining us as well. Who is Rob Thompson?
Yeah, I think much like everyone in the game industry, I'm a hardcore gamer as well. I started off as a professional gamer when I was 13 years old, back when esports was in its infancy. And then yeah, moved out to LA, left school, worked on Call of Duty, and then Riot Games found me, where I worked on League of Legends. Then I moved over to Europe to work on World of Tanks, World of Warships. But yeah, lifelong gamer. I just love the interactive entertainment in general. I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, board games as well. So that's me.
Once you mention D&D, you know you're in, because I can't do that because I didn't get that far in, but better man than I am.
It's
Oh, you
never
can
too
play
late.
online now.
Never
So
too late.
yeah.
Oh man, the chat's gonna be crazy today. I can already tell, but that's fine. Um, so Jerry, I'm really excited to have Ganymede Games in New Mexico. Before we talk about like a little bit background, how you landed here, um, what what is Ganymede Games and what's the mission, the elevator pitch?
Yeah, I mean, we're really looking at cooperative social games. I mean, that's the short answer. And really for us, the big opportunity is how do we use in-game player behavior to better match you with other gamers? I think on the product side, we have this awesome science fiction universe, cooperative multiplayer game that we think is phenomenal. But in today's sort of competitive society, there's also a platform play because, as you know, most games are now have a big service component. Your Fortnites, your Leagues, your Warcrafts. These are perpetually up all the time. So for us, it's really about, we did a ton of work on competitive matchmaking for player versus player at Riot. Some, I think, amazing work. But now we think the big opportunity, and we're not the only one going after this, is really how do you socially match people who are playing a game online? I mean, quietly, I don't publicly say this, but we really have this internal culture of what can we do to reduce toxicity and really get people to believe, to trust that they can come into our game and have an awesome experience, and not, how do we help heal the scars of all those negative experiences they've had in multiplayer games? So we focus a lot on that.
Internet comment thread culture exists in online games as well. Um, Rob, anything to add to what Ganymede Games is all about, what you're doing? Maybe
Well,
speak a
yeah,
little bit about where you are in terms of like where you all are in the development pathway right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I can speak to that. I'm sorry I muted myself. It's just an old habit. Yeah, so yeah, right now we're really focused on a lot of the back end work, getting the matchmaking of how do you take in-game player behavior and match players based on more than just their skill and based on their ping, like Jerry said, but actually based on things like their motivation and why they play and what they're looking to get into the game. And then we're really focused on the moment-to-moment gameplay. So games, as you all know, it's about the actual interactions with the world and with the enemies. So really focusing on the combat and getting that right. Because if that's not fun, then it doesn't really matter. So really focusing on that right now. So we're in that kind of early kind of production phase. And our next big milestone will be kind of going into full production and ramping up the team. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, it's very exciting. In as much as you want to speak about the world you're building with the current game, please feel free, but I won't divulge anything you all don't want to divulge. Let's move on to COVID-19. How has that changed what you're working on when March 15th came, and it started getting real for the entire country? Did the mission change? Have you really focused in on a specific thing, or has it really not changed? Do you see yourselves as as a beneficiary mostly from a business standpoint of this? Take us back to like middle of March and what the mindset was and your all's conversations then, and then kind of fast forward to where you are now, if you can.
Yeah. Rob can probably share from his experience, but there are two things often on my mind: pandemics and earthquakes. And, you know, I tend to be a science guy and always knew something like this was a possibility. But as it was unfolding, you know, one of the things that we realized was that, you know, if it really is the way it looked like it was in China with the lockdown, that people were going to, we were going to go through a very, very rough time. Politically, economically, you know, pandemics are just horrible. And, you know, they're like a lot of things. You know, people who smoke may not necessarily believe they're going to get cancer. And this was going to be really difficult. But for us, the changes that we did was we felt that the social component of what we were working on needed to come into focus faster. That instead of just going to market with what Rob was talking about, this moment-to-moment gameplay, which everything really does hinge on. Nobody wants to play a not fun game. But we really needed to bring forward this social component. And for us in particular, you know, I went to grad school at the University of Chicago, and there are some really brilliant minds there. And some of them have focused a lot on looking at social isolation. And one woman in particular, her name is Louise Hockley. I knew her colleague really well, a gentleman by the name of John. And John has since passed away because of cancer, but Louise has kind of picked up his work. And we reached out to her and really started talking to her about what we were doing and kind of getting the academic view. And I think we would have done that much later if it were not for the COVID-19 crisis. So it brought the platform play and my co-founder's Lynn's sort of DNA experience to the forefront sooner. So we've been spending a lot of time over the past month really looking at a taxonomy that we could use to kind of define some of the behaviors that Rob was talking about. So you know, Lynn's background, to kind of talk about her real quick, before I met her at Riot, she was at Zappos, and her team was really responsible for retooling the Zappos website and dealing with that big question: how do you get people to be comfortable shopping for clothes and shoes online? Mm-hmm. How do you do that? What does that look like? And, you know, she did a lot of things right, and she likes to talk a lot about her mistakes. One of her biggest mistakes she'll talk about is that Tony Hsieh was right. You don't need to worry. Let people try things and return them. They will actually return them. She was less confident about that. And for her, it made her much more trusting about her customers long-term. It was a good lesson for her to learn, she'll say. But they really focused, and the Amazon acquisition actually was a lot about the taxonomy that Lynn and her team built as a way to think about customer segments and most importantly, online customer shopping experiences overall. How do you build trust with the customer? How do you make them feel that they've got this personal relationship with the space or portal in which they're shopping? And for us, we're going to need to use that experience to really build a level of comfort between our players and our game and the broader community, other players in particular. And that's really come more to the front because of COVID-19.
It's really interesting. I'm really intrigued to see what pops out the other end of that fixation. How would you describe the problem as it stands right now? Like, I see my son playing Fortnite. He waffles between Hypixel, Minecraft server, and Fortnite for the most part. He's 14, so he's in that age demographic. But yeah, what is the state of socialization in gaming right now? And there's what's it called? The gamer Slack.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll let Rob talk to it as well. But from my perspective, we'll use your son. You know, if nothing changes, as your son ages, we'll lose him. We will most likely not keep him as a hardcore gamer. And that means we're going to leave a lot of disposable income on the table. Right now, we get your money through your son, and that's good. But it would be better if we could get you to do it as well, and keep you. But unlike your son, who conflict or noise or negative interactions can sometimes spawn confidence or create interesting, dramatic moments. especially for Fortnite in competition, you probably are looking for a very different experience. You probably get enough activity during the day at work that when you come home and you want to chill, the last thing you want is to be yelled at by a 13-year-old. And we've never done a very good job of solving that problem as an industry, right? You probably are less likely to pick up a multiplayer game because, and if you do, you'll probably play it single player because you're going to be worried that you're going to have a negative experience. So we have to have an obligation to fix that. And, how do we get you to feel as comfortable hopping into a video game, engaging with other people as you do, watching a Netflix series or anything else? And that's a real challenge for us.
Yeah, so that's where vision and the socialization aspect that's put in stark relief here with COVID meets market opportunity and unmet market segment of, and I actually am in that market. I stopped playing. Half-Life 2 came out, I think. I was a big Half-Life guy. Unreal Tournament, got fragged a lot, but I stopped playing because there's a bit of a stigma as well that has since changed, or is changing, I would say, but also the fact that it didn't seem like I had the capacity for it anymore either. And really interesting how Ganymede sees sees that as a gap, not as something that should just be accepted or taken as law. And the gaming industry is obviously a very hot one, and yet so much seems to be focused on the 14-year-old son of TJ Cook and getting TJ's money to pay for all his stuff, which I don't do a lot. I'm pretty stringent on that stuff. Rob, what would you say to that?
I was going to say, Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say, I would say, for example, TJ, like your son probably doesn't have any trouble meeting up with his friends in the game, in his games, like that he already knows in real life. But as you get older, we all know that it gets, as you move or you go to college, you drift away from those friend groups. It's harder to stay in touch with people who you don't have close proximity to, but also gets more difficult to meet new people. And we think games do a great job of connecting you with your friends, inviting your friends to a party, or like just messing each other and finding a time to play. But when it comes to actually finding a new friend group or a new gaming group online and coordinating that, you're fighting against the game, and you're having to use third-party tools. Things like Discord are great for, as I mentioned, coordinating with your existing group that you're already friends with and starting a server. But how do you actually, and one of the things we're focusing on is how do you actually facilitate trust between players? Just matching them together and throwing them in a group. They have no choice over that. And there's also no frequency or frequent interactions, because you go into a Call of Duty match, you get matched with them, and you're never going to see that person again. So why wouldn't you just yell at them? Because there's no like long-term connection. So we think a lot about how do you actually create, there's a ton of science behind what creates friendships, the frequency of the interactions with someone, how much, how much you have in common. Is there a way to like create icebreakers or create some common conversation or common ground, and making sure your goals are aligned. If I'm a player who likes to explore every nook and cranny and, like in D&D, open every chest or, go around every corner, and you're a player who likes to just kill everything as quickly as possible, we probably shouldn't be on the same team. And we have that player behavior data from just in our, in what we, how we already design games, but we don't actually use it. So that's an area that we're spending a lot of time thinking about. And it's great. There's already a lot of science, as Jerry mentioned, working with the University of Chicago and others to take some of these best practices. I think it was EVE Online, the CEO there, said that I think it was 70% of their players after playing EVE became real life friends. And that's just the nature of the game design. And now that happened by accident, and now they're looking at how do they design systems to actually, reinforce that, because players who meet in game, they retain longer, they end up spending more money, but also it's a great social experience. So just anecdotally, that's a good example as well, and you see that in World of Warcraft too. So that's kind of a summary of what we're thinking so far. Yeah.
very exciting times. One of the things that forms friendship is doing battle together, going through some difficult experience together. And gaming seems well positioned to, and Ganymede by extension seems well positioned to actually be one of the best social forces in and beyond the time of COVID, where we can't be physically proximal. Um, the other thing that dawned on me as you were talking is like, there's this broader concern. How do you form trust online? In the VC realm I swim in, how do VCs do due diligence on founders when they're used to going to their offices, seeing how they interact, all that stuff. So this is a really broad zeitgeist type problem that if humanity can solve it, we really can build a better world if we can build trust online for once.
I want to think, makes me think of two things. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, makes me think of two things. There's a book recently written that I highly recommend about this, which before I jump into that book, I want to talk about something else. I noticed Becky asked in the chat, Jerry spoke about adding a positive social impact in the game. Can you give an example of this, please? It sounds intriguing. When we're designing a game, as Rob mentioned, what you're doing in the game, moment to moment, is what keeps you interested. And you can do something as an individual. And many games, almost 90% of our games are actually designed so individuals can have fun. And we tend to over-rotate on that because there's less friction. But when you start to design for how people can synergize, and you do it without sort of like at a very basic level, I'm going to try to use an example. In games where there's a lot of shooting, you and I can try to flank someone and shoot him, and he can't shoot both of us at the same time, so we'll get him. That is been around for 30 years. There's nothing new there. And then bigger, more complex games came around where I can stun someone, and then you can go up and sort of beat him up, and we can work together that way. But now we can do other things in games because we have more powerful tools. So when you start to move away from just killing everything you meet, you really have some interesting, unique game design opportunities, right? So, what if ultimately there's I actually have to save things instead of kill things. So a lot of our game, there's tons of games where being the super soldier or the superhero kind of in the powerful sense exists. We take that model and we pivot it just slightly, and we think more about what is it to be the firefighter instead of the soldier. And that little pivot actually makes an enormous difference in a bunch of little game design decisions. So, instead of someone being killed and then restarting, we call that respawning, we give a longer opportunity for them to be healed by their teammates. So you have this EMT opportunity that comes up, right? So it's about designing gameplay in a way that allows more of these heroic moments that are positive versus all of your heroism being about how efficiently you can destroy something. And then our challenge is making those moments fun, right? Mm-hmm. Of course, there's a bad antagonist in our game. We have this dark matter sort of creatures who on the surface are really bad guys. You have to deal with them. But from their perspective, you'll learn that they were here first, and then this big bang happened and all this matter showed up and it really took away, and they just want to make the universe great again. They just want to go back to the way it was. And we're kind of this messy matter in between. And so you have an opportunity to really take people on a deeper, more meaningful journey. It's just hard to do. And, thankfully it's not our first rodeo, and we like tough challenges, and this is where we are. But I hope that gives a good thing. Yeah, we decided we weren't going to run with Muga. We thought about it though. No,
thought
no
about
Muga,
it for
no Muga
0.001 second. Hey Jerry, but I actually want to get people interacting. I think you've already given you and Rob a lot of cool inspiration. really, regardless if they're working on games or any platform, any time there's interaction. I wanted to go down a line of question real quick, more specifically to our entrepreneurs on the call who are early stage, pre-funding, things like that, and get your take on that. I also got Adam and John Mark's take and their different fundraising journeys right now. And I know that's something that you and Rob have been very active on as well. How has, what lessons have you learned you'd love to impart for folks on the call around fundraising right now? Have you changed financial strategy, currently hunkering down, going bullish because you're in a trending market? Like, take us behind the scenes a little bit and how you're handling fundraising right now.
Yeah, so what we've decided is to build more now. And let me explain what I mean by that. From what we're seeing, a lot of venture capital money is being diverted to what I call feeling safer, right? So it means it's always more difficult for early stage startups when you're going to, when it appears you're going into an economic downturn, because somebody would rather, you know, invest in a Series A than maybe a seed round if they have the option. And they're less likely to lead because they're less sure about valuation in a changing market. We you know, some people we know have said that to us about what they're thinking about their funds. But I also think it's not helpful to think like that, to let that impact too much of what you're doing, because I tend to think of it not that, oh, it's, you know, it's better to say, you know, instead of hearing 30 people say no, now I have to hear 50 people say no. Just, it's going to take a little bit longer. So it's about being thoughtful about your run rate. You should have gotten the PPP loan. If you didn't, you know, it's a big help. For us, we use the film rebate, so we have ways to extend our run rate, you know, into next year. But what we decided to do was, with the PPP loan in particular, really deploy that capital specifically on building things. And in our case, it's a multiplayer combat simulation, building out tech that we would need for it outside of the Unreal Engine, and moving it forward. So that's kind of the short of it. I could talk about more detail, but, you know, I'd rather deal with somebody's specific question. Unless Rob wanted to add something to that, you know.
Yeah, I would just agree. I think the easiest way to think about it is that regardless of the field you're in, even gaming, it's only become more competitive because there's less capital being allocated. There's investors that, you know, TJ, as you know, in your world, you're focusing on your portfolio companies and probably will be for the next month or two. So we saw that as an opportunity to, you know, go back to the, you know, really dig our heels in and, you know, when we go back to investors for our next round, you know, to have a really strong story of what we built. And because I think a lot of investors are getting the, you know, the calls around, you know, hey, we need to raise right now, but it's just very difficult. And not everyone has the luxury to do that. But I would say the stronger position you can put yourself in, if you see it as it is a competition in a way for other, you know, you're not just, I think the helpful thing that I realized was, you know, when an investor, you know, is looking at their email inbox at all these different opportunities they have, they're looking at not your deal or your company in a individual sense just by itself. They're comparing it against what else is on the market. And I think that's important to realize, and every little thing you can do to increase your trust with them and your communication of how you communicate your ideas, you know, go a long way because you're being compared in that kind of context.
Yeah, that I see you, and it's awesome to see it, and I'm gonna enjoy the fruits of it myself around. So let's hunker down, let's build, let's leverage PPP. I would agree, of all the stuff that has come out in stimulus is the most startup friendly, because you can do what you're doing with that and hunker down and build, and then have it forgiven from a financial perspective. I got a lot more questions. Everybody's got some questions for you. Some have come through on the chat. But what we want to do now, as those are ruminating in our subconsciousness, is actually get to breakout rooms And this is how it will work. We're going to do groups of 4. There might be one group of 3, something like that. But for the most part, groups of 4. Dan's got them ready. And I've got 3 prompts for you. Basically, spend like 4 minutes on each question as a group. So meet in the group and then go round robin on question 1. Here's my answer to question 1. Here's your answer to question 1. Here's your answer to question 2. And then Dan, through his God mode in the unseen chat realms, will push through to the breakout rooms, question 2 when it's time for that, and try to segue there. So don't cover all 3 questions at the same time. Get to know each other. Have everybody speak for about 4 minutes on number 1, your company's elevator pitch and what game you're playing right now. Could be board game, video game, whatever. And then Dan will prompt you with question 2, which is how you're getting information and making decisions about your company's direction during COVID. And then number 3, any entrepreneur opportunities you see or have been mulling in the midst of COVID that you want to bounce off somebody. My session last week, there's a real great startup that was born that week. So it's really cool. So groups of 4, 4 minutes each question, basically 60 seconds per person. If you're a talker like me, get out your phone and give yourself that 60-second timer. And Dan will prompt you when it's time to move on to question 2, go around and do that. Meet some cool people. It was a really great session. And then when we come back, you'll be able to peg Jerry and Rob with more questions about their company, what they're working on. And we'll get to a closing around the question I didn't get to beforehand around New Mexico specifically, and what we can do to really boldly move forward this ecosystem. All right, Dan.
All right, everyone, thank you so much. Super excited to hear about how your breakout rooms, they are ready in groups of 4. And if you do have anyone who's just kind of a no talker, no video, no nothing, just go ahead and skip that person. And then I will admit you to the rooms. You will have to accept to go into those rooms. And if anything goes wrong at all, just feel free to come back to the main thread or main room, and I'll get you reassigned. All right. Have a great breakout. Recording.
Well, did everybody have a good time in the Zoom breakout room? I got the update from Ryan, and hadn't seen Ryan since 1 Million Cups like 4 years ago. And Ryan, you should put in the game you're working on. It's buttoncitygame.com. Ryan and Shandine have been helping with our indie game community here in Albuquerque, New Mexico for years. So kudos to you all for the incredible work and some of the traction. And a little education that Becky and Carter and I got on platforms that aren't Unity and Unreal as well for game development. Really exciting stuff. Anyway, hopefully you got good connections as well in your breakout rooms, met some cool people. One action to follow up on is, as we have to be intentional in creating trust and building relationships, is get that person's email address. You can do that through chat. Go to send to and ask that one person, hey, I'd love to follow up. Here's my email or my phone, whatever you're comfortable with. And at the very end of this call, we'll actually do a little bit of a blitz where we ask everybody to share what you're working on and ask that you have, so that we can build awareness of what's going on in the community and help each other out. Now, if you all have questions that you've jotted down for Jerry and Rob about Ganymede, about the backgrounds, you name it, love to get to your questions as we've been talking quite a bit. And then I will take back the mic before we leave to get Jerry's thoughts on New Mexico specifically. I know that we tabled that in the fireside chat so we could get to the breakout rooms. But send your questions forward and we'll get to them. I'll allow just a few shakes before I get to that question. So while the questions are coming in, let's call an audible here, because I know Jerry, and then I'll get to your question, Brian. It's a passion for you. You're ecosystems thinker, a systems thinker, and you're relatively new to New Mexico, right? So maybe by way of telling a little bit of that, how we landed in the Las Cruces story, then get to your thoughts on what you see the opportunity is for New Mexico right now vis-a-vis entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and you know, I'll just tell the story because we basically, you know, had the opportunity to come back anywhere in the United States. And so we said, you know, what do we think is the ideal environment for a game developer and their family, right? And we kind of ruled out blizzards and high humidity, and, you know, it starts to narrow down the United States to about, you know, we kind of came either going back to Southern California, like San Diego, Arizona, New Mexico, or maybe the Dallas area as kind of our last choice. So, you know, we were very familiar with Southern California because we were at Riot Games for so long. We had a lot of friends who worked in San Diego. So decided to go to Phoenix, Arizona first. Found it highly polluted, which was strange. I didn't even know there was pollution in Phoenix. You know, the one thing we didn't check for. Then we were going to breeze through New Mexico, but, you know, Albuquerque had a really high property crime rate, so we thought that would have been a deal breaker. We flew to El Paso, drove up through Las Cruces. When we got to Las Cruces, we really kind of paused because it was beautiful. People were friendly. And they kind of rolled out what I thought was a little bit of a red carpet for us. We met with the mayor, city council. Mavita was heavily involved, Davin and Eric. And we just clicked. We felt like, wow, you know, there's a lot here. Property prices are great. There's a major university here. You know, for a game developer, we've got really good internet. That's important. You know, Comcast, Xfinity has to be here. We have to have that. So and we came up to Albuquerque, and you know, this was July, August of 2018 that we were doing our due diligence. And I think in January, it just had a new mayor and wasn't able to meet with us, which was understandable. But give me a reply to my property crime question. And you know, you can't tell a boy from Chicago that the way you're going to solve your property crime issues by hiring more police officers. And that was the answer we got. And I was like, this isn't going to fly. So Albuquerque kind of was great, but it didn't really hit what we needed. And we were also heavily influenced by our time in Europe. You know, we saw a lot of startups in places from Serbia to Poland to Ukraine, and they were all in really beautiful, nice areas. And Las Cruces with the Oregon Mountains and everything else just really hit that. Airport wasn't that far away. You know, it's a 40-minute drive to El Paso. So it kind of checked our boxes. And the New Mexico tax rebate was a really big part of that. That was a huge part of why we came here. So we swung back through Las Cruces, and we were on our way to go to North Dallas area, Plano, Fresno. And then Davin and the team was like, you guys really should stay. And I talked it over with Lynn, and she agreed, and so New Mexico was home. And we never really explored Plano that closely. And we haven't really turned around since. I love it here. Which then the second part of your question, you know, which is, you know, and what do I think the opportunity is? Look, it sucks living in the Bay Area. It's expensive. Traffic is everywhere. Our big tech cities, look, it's not by accident that Twitter said work from home permanently. Facebook's doing it. The list goes on. It's not by accident. And, you know, the world is connected now, and having a great place to live is good. I wouldn't say remote workers should be your business opportunity. I think that'll happen organically, but you could attract some startups to the area. I think, you know, that would be my broad opportunity piece. And before I keep talking, I don't know if Rob wanted to add anything about our search, but I want to give him an opportunity to hop in here.
No, yeah, I think as Jerry mentioned, got a good look at a lot of studios while we were in Europe, and that's what got us thinking about not going back to LA. You know, looking at like places like studios that are really successful in Serbia or Ukraine, Ubisoft has studios all over Romania and France. And the conventional wisdom is you have to go where the talent is. But while we were in Cyprus, we brought a lot of talent overseas from the US over to Europe. And it actually was an advantage that they didn't know anything about Cyprus. And we find that, so far in our recruiting efforts, not a lot of people have an opinion of New Mexico, which helps us then actually form their opinion. They drive in El Paso, or they fly in El Paso and they drive up to Las Cruces. It's a good environment. And so I think it's the same for Albuquerque. I think Albuquerque has a lot of opportunity as well, for game development. So that's kind of some of the context that informed the journey. And as Jerry mentioned, we've been loving it here so far. People have been great. And so that's the story.
Just want to put a pin real quick, and just for those who might not understand, we all hear about the New Mexico film tax credit, but that is something that can be used and has been used by gaming companies such as yourselves, and
we were the first. We were the first.
The statement still stands, but yes, it's really exciting because from an economic base perspective, you look at the film industry, they'll swoop in, and productions are awesome, and it's fun to be working downtown when I'm working downtown and see that the Tom Hanks film just filmed something in the corner the previous weekend and stuff like that. But I'm excited about gaming companies such as yourselves establishing presence in the ecosystem here. Ultimately, would be the next phase here, where more and more are coming and enjoying what you described, Rob. And so it's exciting times, and land I think we can grab because we have so many of the great ingredients. We have problems, absolutely. What place doesn't have problems? But we can't let that hold us back from really getting out in there and telling our story. And the timing is right, just like remote work timing is right for companies. Time is right for places like New Mexico to step up and say, we welcome you, bienvenidos. Let's support your company. All right, let's see what questions we got. Belarus, World of Tanks. Maybe Brian and Rob get some coffee and talk all about Belarus there. Did anything specifically come to mind, Rob, in terms of what it was like to be overseas?
Oh no, to his point, it definitely is a time machine. One of our colleagues did get thrown into jail for one of his passport pages was ripped out. So he got put into jail, and so we had to go pick him up from the embassy. So it is a time machine. They're doing a lot for entrepreneurship there. There's been some tech startups, and they do a lot for wargaming. But I think it's another example of if Minsk, Belarus can birth a $1 billion gaming company where there's no other gaming company, why can't New Mexico do it? And that, we came here, but I think there's also opportunities, and there's already some great game developers that we've met in New Mexico as well. So that was really inspirational for us, seeing and meeting Victor and the Kisley family, and hearing their story of bootstrapping their their small, humble World War II games to then build World of Tanks and others. So a lot of respect for what they're doing. But on the humor side, yes, it is, people do get thrown into jail, and it is very serious. So you have to be careful.
I would only add that Belarus is more old Soviet Union than Russia now. That's the best way to look at it.
Interesting.
And Lukashenko is quite the character. We know his son, actually. To Rob's point, not only did Belarus and Minsk birth wargaming, but they also birthed EPOM, which is a major outsourced company that trades on the New York Stock Exchange. So again, if Minsk, Belarus can do this, you're left with the question, it can be done anywhere. And to that point, we've also invested at wargaming in studios in Serbia, in Ukraine, in St. Petersburg, in Russia. So I think we acquired a company in Australia. I just think there's when people are given an opportunity to pursue their dreams, you know, it may not happen the first sort of shot out, but persistency can pay off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've seen that to a certain extent, been a part of it here in New Mexico, and I think the framework is there, the energy's there. Totally different question. Geeking out a little bit, Dan asked the question, do y'all use cloud servers or do you have your own? What is the scene like when it comes to developing and deploying right now, and how is Ganymede approaching that?
Yeah, I mean, for us, you know, we're in a good time because Amazon Web Services and Microsoft's Azure are in quite the war. And depending on our backend and what we're going to do, depends on whether you're racking your old servers, which is what they're asking there, or whether you're kind of doing, you know, something with the backend of. So for game development in particular, there's a whole slew of backend services that include payments and chat and other things that are provided by companies that were acquired by Amazon and GameSparks and PlayFab are the two I'm talking about. Amazon acquired GameSparks, Microsoft Azure acquired PlayFab. And, you know, so they both do a lot of work to cater to companies. For us, you know, to answer the question directly, it is not a competitive advantage necessarily to have New Mexico servers, because when we're launching a game, we're thinking very globally. And so, you know, we have to think about China, we have to think about Southeast Asia. You know, the nice part about games is I can launch anywhere. But then the question is, where are you hosting? Hong Kong, Singapore? How are you doing with Australia? Where are you going to be in Europe? Are you going to be in Amsterdam? Are you going to be, you know, if you want to touch CIS or Russia, you know, you can't publish a game in Russia. All Russian people data has to be held on a Russian server. So there's just a lot of laws internationally that affect how you launch a game globally. And for the US, you know, a lot of those decisions are based on player population and the game experience. You know, we spend a lot of time mulling over the last mile of cable from your cable junction box to your house, because that's where a majority of our challenges come in delivering games today is basically, you know, poorly wired homes or apartment buildings or things like that. So.
One thing you said that I want to put a pin in as a kind of takeaway for our local entrepreneurs is think globally from the get-go. If you have a software product, especially, the market is potentially everywhere. So you might happen to be building this company in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but you want to be in a launch in the most fertile environment to get traction for your startup, and that might mean travel. That might mean I know we have rerouted on the call, getting on a bus and going to where the first customer is with all the used inventory for your platform, or you know, you hear the Airbnb story. They get accepted into Y Combinator in the Bay Area, and then they tell Paul Graham, oh, yeah, most of our customers are in New York, and Paul Graham says, go to New York. So that's always a good takeaway, and I've always appreciated in our interactions the way you are, both because of experience but also mindset, thinking globally about your product as well. So that's really cool.
If I can say something to that,
yeah, go ahead.
I think one of the reasons that you see, you know, the startups in Minsk, the startups in Iceland, the startups in, you know, why do so many great game companies come out of Helsinki, Finland, or Stockholm in Sweden? Why does Tel Aviv have such a robust startup ecosystem? It's because none of them could have built their business if they only thought about their own country, right? They were forced to, from the beginning, think globally and get global. And they walk into their work with the global perspective because they had to. And I think a lot of US startups think very much North America. And because of that, it obviously for some of them hinders their growth.
That's a great point. Great point. We did have a couple other questions come in. This is pretty general, and Eric, feel free to follow up with like any particular domain. But Eric Montgomery asked, do you have any books/publications you recommend?
You know, you're reminding me that there's a book on my coffee table. It's a book that the name escapes me. I think it's one of Malcolm Gladwell's books, actually. I'm going to look it up here real quick.
Tipping Point, Outliers, David and Goliath.
You're really good. This one is...
What the dog ate.
Say again?
What the dog ate.
Yeah,
What the dog ate.
Talking to Strangers.
Talking to Strangers. Who said that?
Bam, nailed it.
Awesome.
Winner, chicken dinner.
You have the winner. Talking to Strangers. Look, why talking to strangers is so important is because we were talking about building trust. So this is to answer Eric Montgomery's question. I highly recommend talking to strangers. You know, if I were to turn my camera to my wall over to my left, I have a picture of it's a map of every human bias. All of our cognitive biases sort of displayed on a map. And talking to strangers looks at some pretty big historical moments of how much we believe that when we meet somebody in person, we know them. You know, one of the great, most famous examples that Malcolm Gladwell talks about is when the British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, after meeting Adolf Hitler, is convinced this is a good man, right? When Trump, you know, or better example is George W. Bush looks Putin in the eye and says, I can trust this guy. Right? We want to interview people in person because we think when we see somebody, we really know them. But you know, as an HR executive, I can tell you one of the hardest things to do is to teach people how to be good interviewers. And talking to strangers to me is a way of making you very aware at how easy it is to fool yourself into believing someone is a good person or you can trust them. And what you really need to do to establish trust. And to add to that, we spend a lot of time at Riot Games and brought that to wargaming. You know, how do you hire good people? It could probably be a talk all in itself, simply because how important it is to work with talented people who really can perform. But yeah, so I'll leave it there. Talking to strangers, I recommend it.
Boom, good plug. Carter asked, I really love the idea of matching people based on more than just rank, kind of the where you started in terms of what you really focus on at Ganymede. So he asked, how are you implementing that? Are you doing it in your own game? Are you making it ultimately available something other people can implement in their games, or both?
Yeah, Carter, I'm going to answer it like this. I'm not a guy who likes to bullshit. So could I build it for other people? Sure, but it would be bullshit. I just need you to understand that. I need to have a game to connect it to validate a lot of the theories and ideas that were going in there. And I need a game designed to create the player moments that will give us the inputs to create the taxonomy. So those two really have to go hand in hand, right? So by designing certain kind of player experiences and watching how players behave. Again, I gave you the example way early on of we're in the middle of combat. Over a series of 10 combats, how likely are you to be the person to help revive your fallen teammate? Or do you often focus on other things? Those are important data inputs. So we need a game designed to give us those kind of inputs to help us better sort of fill out our player taxonomy. So we think they go hand in hand.
That's great. Usama asks, do you think or how much overlap do you think there is between esports and physical sports enthusiast population, and what you see happening there with, like, you know, we have New Mexico United, USL has
of course
done an e-cup.
One day we're going to have a president with an Xbox Live gamer tag, right? One day we're going to have a president who has a giant Steam account. You know, your gaming is so ubiquitous in society that, you know, who hasn't watched an esport on Twitch if you're under 30? Of course you have. So do I think there's overlap? Yes, I know there's overlap because the entire esports team at Riot Games they had a culture of professional sports in their DNA. And so, yes, the overlap is there. Ariel Horn, look him up. He's doing a really awesome startup out of New York. He was one of he's probably the world-renowned experts in esports broadcasting. And prior to that, he was a sports broadcaster, did Riot's League of Legends, all of what we did. And now he's doing his own startup, specifically focusing on that intersection between in-game sports broadcasting and broader streaming, how we tell stories about sports and the kind of entertainment. So I see him as a long-term contender to what ESPN does. And eventually, if I imagine ESPN will buy him. So yeah, I think there's a big overlap.
That's great. I'm going to go to Ryan's question next, which is great. What type of strategies are you pursuing and or thinking about for user acquisition, user retention? Are you having seasons for your game, competitive modes, season passes? How are you thinking about that?
I could talk about this, but I know Rob knows this answer as well. So I'm going to give Rob a chance. We're early, but Rob can tell you broadly what we think about when it comes to our approach to getting users interested in what we're doing. And then obviously, you know, for us, retention is everything. So I'll let Rob tackle that one.
Yeah. Yeah. So first thing I should say is, so our game is, it's a cooperative game. So not to give too many spoilers, but cooperative RPG, third person. Think about Warframe as a reference point. For retention, you know, one of the things we've learned about retention is, you know, there's out of game things you can do out of game or around game to support retention. So for example, League of Legends, you have esports, you have competitive gaming. That doesn't work quite as well for a cooperative game because the skill isn't as much there as it is about the teamwork. So the type of activities around game and out of game need to match the audience and the type of game. For in-game, the most important thing for retention for us is really designing meaningful long-term goals. As all you can imagine, if you play a game and you finish it or you run out of goals, you're no longer going to play the game. The second thing we look at a lot is we know that players will churn out of our game to play other games. That's the number one reason why. Second one reason is because their friends stop playing. The key is giving players a plan of when they're going to come back before they leave so that they will come back. So for example, there's a game Path of Exile that has seasonal content, and players may stop playing after one season, but the new season gives them a good re-entry point back into the game. You know, competitive games do this as well, but in a cooperative game, that is really introducing a lot of new types of content and enemies and game modes for players. For acquisition, you know, again, it really there's things around the game that we can do to acquire players, but we're in a stage now where we're focused a lot on the actual in-game, you know, game design. How do we get players excited so that they're actually going to be kind of coming in? And we're thinking a lot about, you know, what does it mean to be a game that has revolutionary teamwork, and how we can use that as a unique hook in the game to really acquire players. So really having that as a hook is one thing. And then in terms of kind of launching the game, we'll start off with, as I've talked to TJ about this, a group of early adopters. So players who've played MMOs and RPGs for the last 10, 12 years, and they really are the most hardcore audience, because if we can meet their needs, then you know, we can then widen the funnel to a much broader audience and do paid campaigns and events and kind of broader activities, but really kind of honing in on that product market fit with that initial early adopter customer base for acquisition is key.
I want to follow up real quickly with Azim's question, which is follows nice segue actually. How are you testing right now? Like, you know, we preach lean startup here and staying close to customers, beginning, middle, and always before you have that playable whatever. How do you start engaging right now, and how do you start testing right now?
I'll add two things. Real quick, I just want to, before I forget, Dan asked a question about digital currencies. I just want to knock that one out real quick. Dan, you said you have to hire some sort of lawyer. Digital currencies are super complicated because of Europe's changes to GDPR, in addition to how our accounting, every year there are kind of these accounting regulations, and the most recent one made it super complicated. So the answer to your question is Deloitte plus your legal team will be a great advisor so that you can go globally with digital currencies, because they're affected in a lot of ways. You would be naive if you did not understand sort of what the latest general accounting practice principles are and how they affect how you accrue revenue, when revenue is counted, when players are allowed to get a refund on digital currency purchases, all sorts of things. So yes, it's complex. Second thing was the question on testing games. Rob could answer this too, but I wanted to hop in on one thing here. Look, when you're making a game, if it's not fun for the team and they don't want to play it every day, it's not worth making. It's such an overlooked thing. Nobody's going to work at Ganymede Games because this is a gaming job. You're going to work at Ganymede Games because you love the game we're making and you can play it every day. I'm going to make you play it every day. If you don't love it, we have a problem. Either we have a problem because we hired incorrectly, or we have a problem that we're not making the right game, right? And when we're going to hire you, you're going to have played the games. You're going to be an audience. You're going to know the audience we're going after because you're going to have played those games, understand them, and you're going to have liked them, at least at this stage. Maybe when we're big and successful, we can afford to hire people who aren't hardcore gamers who love the product. But customer empathy is such a strong component of what we need to make great gaming products. If you don't have that customer empathy, we're not going to hire you, right? And that's nothing wrong with you. It's just you wouldn't be a good fit for Ganymede Games. And so ultimately, if we don't love playing it every day, then we're not going forward. So that is a very important part of game development. I can't stress that enough. It's about how you hire, how you work, and how you create moments that delight each other and surprise each other. Rob, I think that describes it, I think, from our experience, right?
Yeah. I had a chance to be a part of the early team that was working on a game called Valorant, which Riot Games launching. And there was like 10 people on it, and their play testing for them was a religion. Play testing every day. They recorded every play test. There was feedback sessions, and they would not miss any play tests at all. And this was really a critical part. And when they hired for the team, they hired former Counter-Strike professional players. They, Stephen Lim, who's the producer, had like 10,000 hours in Counter-Strike. So you really have to understand the core audience and the nuances of what are their pain points and what are their delighters. And for them, they were trying to beat Counter-Strike. So you need to understand what came before. And so for us, what comes before us is all the RPG games. That's why our lead designer, is a very very hardcore RPG player and lives and breathes the games. It's really critical that core team is the audience, because you have to gut check it against yourself. I think that's really important for games, at least. That's the best way that we found out so far from our experience, at least. Yeah.
Carter, I want to address something you said. You said it seems like a lot of game studios are trying to design games for someone else and not themselves. I'm going to tell you honestly, what they're doing is they're designing for a business model. And that business model then becomes an artificial constraint. So they're finding the click to the business model before they're finding the fun. And there's two reasons for this. One reason is that not everyone can be a game developer on a new game. Not everyone has the entrepreneurial or the R&D skill set to work on an early game team finding fun. So you've got a lot of talented developers who do awesome if they're doing a derivative product, something that is a sequel or a variation of a game. And players generally like to play a certain genre of game for a while, so there's nothing wrong with that. But we did arrive at a moment in time where a lot of R&D projects didn't pan out. Anthem for BioWare and EA, Fallout 76 for Bethesda. And that's not to knock those, they just didn't execute well. Primarily because they were what we call box product retail game studios, who are used to shipping something for $59.99 on a deadline, and now had a transition to making a live service game, which Anthem and Fallout 76 are. I imagine those things will get better over time and people will fix it. But the reason you're seeing this problem in the game industry right now is after Riot proved out free-to-play could work on PC games, there was such a large push. I mean, World of Tanks did it. EVE Online did it. So there was this push of getting everybody into these big game as a service models. And that has decreased the number of other games in development because making a game as a service is such a manpower intensive operation. So yeah, that's why you're seeing that.
Fantastic stuff. We got to cut it short because we're heading up on time, and I have one request of everybody, two requests. My reflection from the Q&A and how you talk from a place of knowledge and passion about the video game industry is that I take a lot of inspiration and apply it to some of our, B2B SaaS Activate startups. There's lessons here for all entrepreneurs. And I've always appreciated about game theory, way back to when Nazim, my friend on the call, The Art of Game Design by Jesse Schell and Reality is Broken by Jane McGonigal, started to awaken the broader entrepreneurial and innovator scene to, hey, all this trouble you're having, user acquisition, retention, that's all that gaming people think about every day. And we talk about testing our own software and being our own users. I just was very inspired by the way you're approaching that at Ganymede, and I hope the community is as well. Thank you so much for taking the time with us, Jerry and Rob. I know you got a lot always going on, given the big push you are making. Glad to have you here in the great state of New Mexico. Here are my asks. Put what you're working on, a link, could be your LinkedIn profile, if you don't have a thing that you're working on, and put out your ask. Please sign up, please try it. I need this, put it out there, and let's commit to scrolling through here. And then if you would do us the pleasure for these free sessions of, do us the honor of filling out this quick survey to tell us the value. It's very quick. It's the tiny URL link that Dan put up just a little bit ago. Just clickety-click on that, please, and fill out that survey so we can keep stay engaging and meaningful and valuable to you. My thanks to Dan for the Zoom disc jockey goodness, and all of you this Friday before Memorial Day coming to join us. And Jerry and Rob, thanks so much for being here. I'm gonna get a little quiet and wait till everybody puts out what they're doing so everybody else can see, and maybe make one more effort to make a connection for everybody here. Yep, chat, making it easier to buy, sell, and donate use adventure gear, rerouted co-op, awesome stuff. I'm still looking. Oh yeah, we got the link to your game, Ryan, coming up. Becky, CEO of Canopy Digital Innovations, building apps, tech solutions for positive impact. Thanks, Becky. Brian, let me know if you guys know lawyers that want to automate sucky, repetitive portions of their jobs. Love it. Usama is working in data distribution, monetization, analytics, starting a sports media / sports betting company. And yeah, Usama, Brian, Becky have been activators. Love having them in the community. Azine is combining the physical and digital worlds to help children discover new pathways to creativity and play. Initial focus on augmented reality. Super early in development. Connect and let's chat.
Azine, just going to add something. Azine, reach out to me. I know some people who are looking at that space, but you're playing in the right area. So I put my email there, or not ask somebody to get it, but that's really good to hear. I might be able to help there.
Thanks, Jerry.
Wonderful. Boom. Connection made. Love it. Shandine, connect to the local Albuquerque game developer community, AGDG. And that's listed there. It's a meetup weekly. They're moving online. They've done some cool stuff Ryan was describing. Tim is demo what you're working on, that kind of thing. Very cool. Carter's also with Rerouted. Sierra Duran, He's working on in BizWorks, an online entrepreneurial support platform. Awesome. Ryan, Subliminal, AGDG. Awesome. I think we got everybody connected. Please fill out that survey. Please have a great weekend, and please dream big for your business and for New Mexico, and stay engaged. Have a good one, everybody.
Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.